What's up, everybody? Troy Cartwright here. Welcome back to another episode of 10-Year Town. This is episode 60. I can't believe it. Before we get started, I got two things to ask of you guys. Number one, please go to 10yeartown.com and join the 10-Year Town community. And the second thing is, if you got somebody in your life that you think would enjoy this podcast, send it to them. Easy. Doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of time, and we appreciate it. Thanks. Today's guest is a Nashville institution, Ward Guenther. Ward is the founder of Whiskey Jam and the host of the Ward Guenther Show on Apple Music. In this episode, we talk about the origin story of Whiskey Jam and how it has evolved into this thing where I know personally I met so many of my friends here in town, and it is a true Nashville rite of passage to play Whiskey Jam, to attend Whiskey Jam, and I know you guys are going to love this episode. So without further ado, here he is, Ward Guenther.
I'm excited to see you and be here as well. Good
Dude,
to see you.
I'm very honored that you're here, and I'm excited for this. I feel like we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
This is probably going to be the longest that we've ever actually talked one-on-one.
This is my situation quite a bit now.
Yeah.
With my job at Apple.
Yeah.
I get to talk to people that I've known for many years for the longest time ever. And it's great. My experience at Whiskey Jam, though, was just usually like, meet somebody at a bar or while I was bartending, or send them a text blindly, and then you have them, they come play a show, you kind of get to know them and their music, but you never really go
go
on
deep.
a vacation with them or anything. This is like a little quick vacation.
Yeah. This is like a good, I call it almost like it's like a quality time simulator where like you get to have like a nice get to know someone conversation.
Yeah.
And then you leave there and you're like, I feel like I really know this person now.
It's not quality time, but it's like it.
No, it is. It's quality time with a perceived audience, I guess.
No, that's good. It is funny. The perceived audience part of a lot of what we do all day long is so wild. Thinking of who is on the backside of that lens that you're, rehearsing into and doing 50 takes to get your social post right. It's brutal. Yeah, it is.
It's interesting though, because and we're just getting off topic immediately, but that's fine. I feel like when I was growing up, and I don't know if this is unique to me, but it's probably not, like when I would like shoot hoops in my driveway, I'd always imagine all these people were watching.
Okay.
Or I'd even imagine like that the girl I had a crush on in my neighborhood was like maybe driving by.
Okay. I think that's pretty common.
Yeah.
Mine was that there was a scout. There was a basketball scout driving through the neighborhood. Just happened to be driving through the neighborhood. He saw me, an under average height kid. And he's like, I'm just shooting these crazy shots, just hoping like the scout's going to see and be like, hey, come here, kid.
Yeah. He's like, but he's got a lot of grit.
Can you dribble through your legs? You're like, no.
Oh my gosh.
It's potential. That's what I'm hoping they saw.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about this because I know who's through the lens in here.
Yeah.
It's me. I'm watching these podcasts and the recaps and my friends on this show, and you've tapped into something really great and real here, which I think is awesome.
Thank you.
In Nashville, because a lot of people are trying to do things. I was listening to a podcast this morning from 2021 that another person I know had done. I was like, he didn't really have any business in the space.
Yeah.
But it was just what you were supposed to do.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's tricky. It's like, I think for whatever reason, I love podcasting. Like I love the format.
Yeah.
And for years I was just trying to figure out like, how do I do one? I kind of didn't have a good reason.
Okay.
And then this idea of like, oh, well, you're doing the version of this like every time you're in a writer room where you're trying to get to know someone, right? It's like, it's like, what's your story? You know? So
Yeah.
it like immediately was like, oh, well, okay. I think that this could work.
Yeah. Just get some nice cameras and some nice lights.
Yeah. Yeah. And like finding all that stuff also a process, you know? Well, I always start this thing off with the same question, which is, how long have you been in town?
I have been in Nashville 21 years now.
Okay. Where from originally?
I'm originally I was born in Mississippi, moved to Memphis when I was not even old enough to know. I moved to Memphis when I was 2.
Gotcha.
So I knew Memphis as home, and went to college in Knoxville, came back to Memphis after college, and nothing could keep me from Nashville. You know,
Gotcha.
I had a lifeguarding job post graduate. You know, my bachelor degree was putting me in a lifeguard job.
Yeah.
And I went and visited Nashville one time to try to get a job in advertising, and I don't even think I did much while I was here as far as like visiting. I just picked up on the vibe, and I was like, I got to be there.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it takes. If I have to work at, you know, a restaurant, which is what I ended up ultimately doing, that's what was going to get me there. You know, my folks were like, you need to have a job using your degree.
Right.
And when you land that, that's your sign you can go. And it was one of the first times with my folks that they were just like, okay, you know, you've listened to us for 18 years or 22 years at this point. You're pretty bound and determined to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. 21 years. The day I moved to town, they were pulling the tarp off the Musica statue at the roundabout on Music Row. So that kind of gives you a time frame.
Okay.
And so I pull off the Demumbrian exit, Demon Brun, as I was reading it at that point in time,
Right.
and go up the road. I had a house with a bunch of guys back behind Bobby's Idle Hour, the original location, and pulling up the street, they're pulling off the tarp, and it was such a sign to me. You know, I was like, oh, they're revealing this statue which depicts the chasing of the golden ring.
Yes.
Like, that's never been a more perfect omen to be moving to town.
Yeah. You know, I've never thought about what the statue was, but that makes sense.
Oh, and they're just stepping on each other's shoulders and heads to get this golden ring. It's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, but that is a great metaphor sometimes for this business, you know?
That's all. I mean, it is. You look at it, if you sit there and go, oh, dang.
Yeah.
If I'd really thought about this when I pulled on, I might have just turned back off the exit and gone to lifeguard somewhere.
Yeah. What was your degree in?
Advertising.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
I'd gone into business marketing, but it was in the business school, and accounting was like just a total foreign language to me. It still is. Yeah. It's crazy because like I did very, very well in school, went a full ride to Tennessee. Accounting was just like, it just never computed. So I have a super respect for accountants. Yeah. Yeah. My dad is an accountant, and I did not get any, you know? Oh, really? Man,
no.
God bless your dad.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how he does it. And that's probably why I do what I do, because he would just look at me from a very young age and be like, just please do something that you love. Like,
that's great. That's great.
Yeah. Very encouraging.
Well, that is though.
Oh,
you know?
Dude, I'm so
coming
lucky.
From such a responsible place, you know, a secure profession of accounting. It's like, hey man, other people can do this. Yeah. Go do something you want.
Yeah. Always encouraged me. Always been my biggest fan. Still is.
That's great support.
Yeah, it is. So you move here. You said you're working at a restaurant.
First job I got was at Amerigo.
Gotcha.
And I almost made it through training, but there was a thing where you had to get your shirt dry cleaned every day. Okay. And $1.80, I think, was what a shirt dry clean at that point. I was like, $1.80 a day? Every time I walk in this building, I got to pay $1.80. And so that was the deal breaker. Yeah. And I went to work at Otter's Chicken. Do you remember Otter's?
I don't.
It was on Demumbrian about, what's there now? Just Love Coffee. Okay. Over there by Tin Roof and stuff. And fried chicken joint. Yeah. First gig I ever had in town was playing outside on the patio at Otter's with Jake Owen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I take it you were enchanted with the music scene and kind of digging into that when you got here? Or?
Yeah. I started playing guitar in the late years of high school, which was probably helpful because I wasn't obsessed with it until after I had started on kind of like an academic and, you know, school path. I was very involved in school and succeeding. Yeah. before I discovered the guitar. And as soon as I did, it was almost like, oh no, when I got to college and had the freedom to do whatever I wanted, I spent my days and nights down in the basement of our dorm, like locked in the piano room, just playing guitar. And it really just got obsessed with it and learning all the songs that I'd grown up listening to. It was kind of like, you never thought of them from the same creative perspective. And so as you start playing, it's like, oh my gosh, just unlock this universe.
Yeah.
And then, door after door, as you go through another door, it's like, wait, you can write these songs. Oh, you can make this music. Oh, you can play this music. And I got so obsessed, like freshman year of college, I tried to convince my parents to let me drop out, citing Steve Jobs and Michael Dell as examples, of successful dropouts. And they very politely reminded me that they were geniuses. So they were like, what would make you happy? What would make this make sense? I was like, I'd love to go to Belmont. And they're like, well, you can't do that. You're giving up like an incredible free education at Tennessee.
Right.
Why don't you? And it was great because I had a freedom in my program to you could kind of create your curriculum.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, just, piece together what classes you think could maybe UT could offer that would help you in the pursuit of moving to Nashville. And so I kind of cobbled that together and ended up with advertising, and it's helped.
Oh yeah.
I think that's all we do now.
Yeah. I think it's definitely working.
Yeah.
And
so I was writing songs and playing music, and that was what got me here in the first place.
Yeah. And so were you like kind of getting immersed in like the songwriting culture and like all that stuff?
When I moved here, it was a different city, 21 years ago. It was very different. It was not as overwhelming. It was not as, I guess, distracting is a good word, which is I'm very fortunate that it wasn't like it is now, because I was distractible enough and distracted enough 21 years ago. But I had my routine. Monday night I would go to the Bluebird Cafe for open mic night. If I had a ticket, great. If I didn't, I would wait in line to get a ticket for the next time.
Okay.
And Tuesday night, Douglas Corner. And Wednesday night, I can't even remember the name of some of these places. It's so long ago. But we had a routine.
Yeah.
The places you would go. And then on the weekends, I was working at Otters. So, I kind of kept my nose to the grindstone those first few years, just going out and meeting people, because I didn't know anybody when I moved to town. I had one high school friend that went to Vanderbilt, but outside of that, it was totally clean slate, start fresh.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Which is so fun.
And man, like,
it's scary, but
I really am so glad that I got here when I did, because it would be really there would be incredible pressure to move here now as a not knowing anybody. The social scene is so huge. The focus on Nashville from a pop culture perspective is so huge. It would be intimidating. I felt like it was very approachable in 2003 to be here, and as difficult as it has proven to be.
Right.
Just in my time, it was a lot easier still. Than it is now.
And was anybody like at that point, I guess the music business had sort of started to like implode a little bit, right? It's 2003, 2004.
Yeah, it was still, I was still burning CDs to sell out of, my trunk basically. The world hadn't switched over to streaming. But iTunes, I remember one of my first years here getting an iPod and moving all my CDs onto my sister's laptop and like connecting my iPod and having that moment was pretty huge. iTunes exploding, but you still had I can kind of reference where it was in time, because we'd be out at night at bars with radio or record label guys, and just credit card, like the label credit card was such a big deal for the first probably 5 years I was here. And then as things started to change, you see less and less of the the promo guys out just burning it down every night. We got to see the entire change of the streaming revolution kind of with everybody trying to figure it out simultaneously.
Right. Yeah. Like what's going to happen.
As if anybody still has.
Yeah. We still don't know.
No.
You know, we're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So what happens next? You know, what did the next, 5-10 years look like?
So those early years doing the writers round scene, I think were very important to me, because I would go out and I met my people, I met my friends, I met my co-writers, I met my network, and I got used to that scene. I don't think made the most of the creative community as far as the, writing songs full-time, professionally, really giving it my all. I remember, ignoring phone calls of people who have come to my house to write songs because I'd been out too late the night before.
Gotcha.
I could have been better at that, but it kind of all led to what I do now. And so after those first couple of early years, it was just like bang, 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 all like every single night. Let's go, let's write songs. I was like, okay, I got a job on the road with Billy Currington selling T-shirts.
Gotcha.
And that was a pretty big turning point for me, because I got to see at that time him go from an artist, pretty obscure. He had one, Walk a Little Straighter, Daddy was his first single. And, I came on right when Must Be Doing Something Right hit. And so you go from an obscure artist with a slow first single to a monster like song that's still played today. And we went from little hole in the wall strip mall clubs in strip malls.
Right.
Clarify.
I got what you mean.
To straight up arenas with Brad Paisley on this tour, because the song of that magnitude would launch you to the next level. And so we got to see it, and man, all these things that I had seen on CMT and in my mind, the Garth Brooks Revolution, watching this guy go and play Central Park and have play Notre Dame Stadium, and like that being the things that the mountaintop, I then got to see the trail to the mountain, and then the base camp, and it was I feel like a pretty watershed moment in my career, because I was like, man, I don't think this is what I thought it was. There's a ton of traveling, there's a ton of strangers. The people that are coming out to see you aren't necessarily people that you are they might not be your friends. They might be completely different from you, and that sets up a weird dynamic. So after a couple years on the road, I was like, I need to get back my focus on songwriting and be home and do my thing. Give it a good shot. The things that I had messed around and screwed off with the first couple of years, like, okay, let's get our eggs in a basket again. And I got off the road, was bartending at the Tin Roof, and spent a couple of years doing little radio tour gigs, playing backup guitar and singing harmony for David Nail.
Gotcha.
Which was a cool experience too, because then I got to see, I'd seen the clubs to the arenas. Now we're getting to see radio tour to the club. So that first chapter of an artist's career, I got the full spectrum in just a few years' time, and I liked seeing the radio tour side. The kind of how the inner workings of radio and how that political process all worked, and driving from Spokane to Seattle, and our radio, like the promo rep, talking the whole time on the phone to people trying to push the song. I was like, man, this is crazy, the things that are behind the scenes that you don't know. And I don't know, that kind of re-energized me in the music world personally. And about that time was when we started Whiskey Jam. One night, on a night that I normally would have been, going out to a bar, hang out with some friends, whatever. I was at home, and I was like, I'm going to go to bed tonight. I'm going to have a good night's sleep. And, a rare night to do that. And Frankie Ballard texted me. He's like, hey man, you want to go play some music? And I was like, oh, dang. He said the one phrase
that'll get you out.
Well, no, it was like, it normally would have been like, hey man, let's go downtown. Let's, see where some girls are, whatever. But he said, hey man, let's go play some music. And I was like, that doesn't happen much. You can't just go to bed when somebody asks you to do the one thing that you moved here for.
Yeah.
At that point, 8 years after I'd been to town, I was like, okay, good for him.
Yeah.
You know, getting me, I don't know, I can't remember what day that was. Anyway, but roughly 8 years after I'd moved to town, I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So we went to a bar, played some songs for a bar tab, like really pure, some originals, some covers, just had a few buddies on the instruments and had a blast. Everybody kind of sharing the spotlight and coming from these years of writers' rounds that were just insufferably boring in a lot of cases, to a fun bar experience. So we probably didn't have a dozen people come out to see us that night, but it was so much fun because it really was like just pure.
Yeah.
And the next day I tweeted, just said, thanks to everybody for coming to the first ever Whiskey Jam. And Josh Hogue, my buddy, one of my, just running buddies back in the day, texted me immediately. He goes, hey, what is Whiskey Jam? And I was like, it was the best description of what happened last night. A bunch of friends getting together, jam. There was whiskey involved. Yeah. And he called me. He said, there's something there. That phrase is cool. Like we could do something with that phrase. So let's think. And we brainstormed a little bit and kind of developed the loose framework of Whiskey Jam and launched it shortly thereafter. But all of it so incredibly inspired by like just real pure moments. Yeah. That involved all the things that, got me excited about music and Nashville the years before. Wow.
That's amazing. And how long after you like have that idea does it take you to like get it kind of going, I guess? You got to find a location and
right. In my mind it was pretty fast. I look back and go, it seems like immediate, but it's funny because you look back at some old pictures and there's nights where there's nobody in the bar and you've got great artists like, hit songwriters and signed label artists on stage. It's like, there's nobody there those nights. We just kind of blocked at the memory. No, it was pretty quick because in a world of the more subdued writers' nights that we were so used to, where you're shushing, not shushing, but like you play your song, you cover your strings, and you look politely to the next guy or girl, and wait your turn again. In the face of that, it was like, oh my gosh, why have we not thought of this before? Basically a writers' round with instruments, with party, where you can do whatever you want, and we really, push the throttle on the free shots and drink as much as you can. It's a Monday night. And so it took off. It was immediately, accepted into the scene because it was so different. And so like, oh shoot, we should have been doing this all along. But yeah, that's it. It all started, and I mean, within a few months, it was really off and going. Yeah. I've kept good records through the years of who played, and there was my only little blank spot is like April, May of the first year after we had started in January, because I was like, I just don't know if this is even worth writing these names down, if this thing's going to continue. And then about May that year, it started back up, and it was just crazy, the amount of people and the artists that we were having. I always think about that little dead space of like,
what happened?
Yeah, who might have played that I just forgot? The memories are long gone.
Yeah. I've always enjoyed that, like, record part of it, because when I first came to town and like, you go to Whiskey Jam for the first time, and it's like, oh, so and so's playing. This is like their X number of time playing, or like, I don't know. I just feel like on social media, I'll be like, we've had this person that's played this many times has the #1 song or whatever. It is just like, I don't know. That's just
one of the
cool
things that every year around the time of our anniversary, I do the Whiskey Jam by the numbers, and it is that kind of yearly just check in. Hey, how many songs in the top 50 are Whiskey Jam alumni either performing them or writing them? And over the years, it's just like it creeps up. And we're approaching 1,000 shows. We have 438, I think, #1 songs have been written or recorded by our family. And there were points in time where I felt guilty, of counting those up and going, is that representative of what you're doing? Chris DiStefano has 10 of those #1s. He played whatever. He played quite a bit. But in a case where you'd have an artist or a writer that might play one time, and we're like tacking 6 number ones on the playlist. It's like, is that really honest? But dude, after almost 14 years and still having incredible numbers, it's like, if we just had a couple of hit songwriters or artists through the years, that'd be one thing, but it is just kept on and kept on.
Yeah.
Like,
it has become like an institution.
I'm so glad that we're still around, that we're still something that people want to do. Like artists like you who've played it through the years and are playing upcoming here soon, as well as artists that have never been to Nashville before and just know it is a thing that they want to do. It's like still important to the younger generation to be at this event and to take part in it.
Oh, no doubt. I think my first time playing, I think I'm remembering this correctly, that I think like Jake Gear had reached out and like gotten me on or something. I don't know. I don't remember who reached out, but I don't even think I lived here yet.
Okay.
And it was like a huge deal to me,
awesome. Yeah.
you know, that I was like, oh dude, like I'm really doing something, you know?
Yeah, I think that it, it's kind of taken on this thing of its own.
Yeah.
After you have a certain amount of artists and moments happen there, people go, oh my gosh, I want to play on this stage that, you know, Luke Combs has played on, or, I mean, you name it, has played on. I'm not likening us to, you know, the Bluebird or the Opry or anything, but there's not too many other things that have been around that long.
Yeah.
That we're enjoying being in the scene for longer than most anybody.
Was there any moments along the way, whether it was a year in or 5 years in or whatever, where it sort of dawned on you that it was like kind of bigger than you, and you know, it kind of took on a life of its own?
I remember a few times in the first couple of years being at my house, like I think probably waking up, laying in bed, thinking about it, going, that's what happened last night's not normal. You know, that's kind of crazy. And I remember texting Josh about it and going, man, something really special is happening here. We need to figure out how to grow this, protect this, you know, make this as important as it could and should be.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was pretty early on because, you know, we were having big guests come through. A lot of it thanks to Josh kind of laying that foundation. He had artists coming from LA, The Fray and One Republic, just popping in to this event that was fairly underground at that point still, you know, and it was doing something special where it's like, golly, I watch so many documentaries on music and artists and stuff. Looking back at our starting point now, well into our history, it's like, man, that was kind of these moments in history that you see movies made about now.
Yeah.
I think it was perfect timing all around, because 2011 Nashville was on the cusp of that decade of just insanity.
Yeah. What, you talk about like being intentional about just like thinking about the brand and like just protecting it and making it the best it could be. Like because I actually think that that's an important skill for any business, but also like for like someone's artistry, like it's not dissimilar at all. So like what were like the things that you did or were thinking about?
Man, I kind of go back and forth on this because I am a big believer in just kind of fate's through line, and without being cheesy or corny, what's meant to be kind of, it seems a little lazy as far as, you know, missions go, but it's worked fairly well for me personally. And the things that I do, you know, as a musician, I was always like, if I'm going to keep on doing this as long as things keep, you know, you reaching milestones and you're getting better and doing better. And so with Whiskey Jam, I was like, okay, let's not mess with this too much. Because when we started it out, we didn't have a business plan. We didn't have any sort of big direction. But it was like, let's make sure we kind of keep this loosely between the lines. And as we learned what it was and what it meant to the scene and how we could contribute overall, I think we've kind of tightened the reins and the focus through the years, where in the early years when it was what we're talking about, like the drinking contest, you know, we laugh about it now. It's like do you remember the days when the next morning we would give out the Jammer Award, to the drunkest person at the show, and it wasn't embarrassing. It was like a thing back then. I feel like it was a little just different socially in Nashville. And then I think about 2015, I took over full control from Josh. He went on to be a very successful songwriter, but I feel like Whiskey Jam was taking away from his ability to write and his happiness, really.
Yeah.
So he let me take over full time, and from there I was like, okay, this is my moment. I've got a lot to prove. These years that Josh had helped lay that foundation, it's all on me now to let it, sink or swim. And I coincidentally, that same year, my parents moved to town. My sister's been here for almost as long as I have, and we were starting families, and my parents lived in Memphis. They're like, let's just move over here. So when they got to town, they started coming to Whiskey Jam almost every Monday night. And I couldn't, get drunk on stage anymore. I couldn't tell these just terrible, dirty jokes on stage anymore. Part of the, the R-rated fun of it, I was like, man, let's dial it back. And I mean, as soon as we kind of reined it in and said, okay, let's make this a little bit more approachable for everybody. Let's make it a little bit more family friendly, for lack of a better term. It really blew up.
Yeah.
It started, we were attracting artists that might be like, that seems a little rough for me. We were attracting partners in, takeovers when you're working with publishers and agencies and labels that might not want to associate with, a dude that's had several Red Bull and vodkas,
right.
A liability on stage. But after 2015, there was so much pressure and so much focus. It was attracting great events, great partners, amazing artists. And from there, it's crazy to think that's almost 10 years ago. It's been just a kind of a constant, upkeep and seeing what's working and what we can do better. I had my partner Ryan came on in 2017 and helped streamline a ton of things and make it really what was kind of an event, a fun thing that had a business in it somewhere.
Yeah.
In 2017, it turned into a actual business that those kind of principles went into handling it and treating it.
Yeah. Did you ever expect that when you started, that it would become such a huge,
Definitely not, man. I mean, I would have never, ever, ever imagined the 10th anniversary selling out the Ryman without a lineup when we started. In those early months when I was not writing the names down, because who cares? Who's going to look back at this? Yeah. Doing something of that magnitude seemed, it wouldn't have even crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic lesson, and I think about this a lot, because what seemed preposterous in 2011, even 2012, whatever, those early years, made total sense in 2021. And so I think about, okay, this road is not ended. This story is not over. What seems preposterous now?
Yeah.
What in 2034 seems like, yeah, right. We joke about Whiskey Jam Airlines. Why not?
Who knows?
Virgin Airlines didn't set out to be an airline, and I'm not shooting for that. But in a world of we can be whatever we pursue. I like to think towards the preposterous end of the scale.
Yeah, dream big.
Might as well.
Yeah.
It's become a little bit more challenging now because there's so much action in Nashville and so much competition in our event space and the space that the spaces we are aiming for, larger and bigger and better things. It's like, man, it's getting tougher and tougher, but it's exciting.
Yeah, when you got an advantage. I mean, you got the history,
That is an incredible thing. I mean, we talk to a lot of people about ideas and potential partnerships and things moving forward, and just kind of growing these ideas, incubating these long-term goals. And one of the things I harp on, I was just like, listen, no rush. There's no rush here to be first to market or whatever. Every day that passes before we do these things that we're thinking about only solidifies this foundation that we've been building for almost 1,000 shows. Wow. So, if, say, whatever, a festival, it's like there's a lot of people getting into the festival business. It makes perfect sense for Whiskey Jam to grow to that, as we've had smaller stages at larger festivals. It's like, but are we allowed to compete? You know, is it relevant for us to be there? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
We're 1,000 times more than anybody that, you know, dreams up a name for a festival and makes a cool poster. We have 1,000 shows on that entity, whatever it might be, that give us credibility. And, you know, we're not trying to pick from these trees. It's like we've grown the tree.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is huge. And I think, what I find so interesting hearing you talk about it too is like, as you start in life, like on any journey, you sort of just start walking. You have no clue.
Yeah.
And then you get a few years down the road, and when you kind of do land on some little bit of magic where something starts going your way, it's like you sort of find like the almost like audacity to dream bigger, which I think is so like fun when you hit that point where it's like, well, why couldn't we start an airline or whatever, you know? It's like, well, why not? Why not us? You know,
I see that in the artist space quite a bit. You know, you get a handful of hits, you know, in your corner, and your fans are hungry for anything that you put out. That's a magic moment because it just frees up your confidence, and you're not concerned about what people are going to say. We're in a unique spot because we're a lot unlike artists. You know, the artist is the one brand, is the one voice, is the one style-ish that identifies that artist. With Whiskey Jam, we are, that definition is being blurred more every single show. You know, every time you add 6 new names into what we do, what we represent, what we present to the community, it gets a little bit harder to pin down, which isn't, I like it because it's made me stay aware and alert and nimble and active every single freaking day. You know, I wake up thinking about it. I go to sleep thinking about it. What are we doing? Are we competitive? Are we gaining ground, losing ground?
How do you measure?
Shoot, these days
just like a vibe, or
these days it really is just kind of an intrinsic feel. You know, I try to think about the nights that I show up at a show and I'm like, it's not as busy as I'd like it to be in here. And by the end of the show, I'm like, that was fantastic. We did everything we possibly could to make this enjoyable, and I'm satisfied. It's getting harder, I will say, overall in Nashville, in the scene. I was reaching out to somebody just this morning saying, like, not asking a question about your events or mine specifically, but have you noticed that it's harder to excite Nashville to go to an event? And it's as more people come here, as more things happen, as things become less rare, you know, doing something that's extraordinary, motivating, has gotten really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And after you do a lot of really, really motivating and extraordinary things, repeating that, I mean, it's like songs, you know, like, hey, great hit song, do that again.
Yeah, it's like literally, like, we have people on here all the time. It's like, well, what did you feel like when you got a number one? It's like, I got to do it again.
Yeah.
You know, and it's daunting.
It's daunting. For us, it's very humbling. You know, we can have the biggest show of our life, and then 3 days later, we got to have a regular, another normal show. And it's beautiful because, you know, you play the Ryman on Monday. On Thursday nights, you have your show that 6 artists that nobody's ever heard of before. And it's like, you know, everybody that played the Ryman, the first time they played Whiskey Jam, nobody knew who they were.
Yeah.
You know,
that's cool.
The nights that, oh, totally. I look at pictures of Morgan Wallen and I missed it. I didn't see it in the moment of how special what was happening was, but I don't know if anybody in the room did really.
Yeah.
And so I think about that a lot when these artists up there, I'm like, it's good. I don't know if it's like my thing or if I totally get it, but you know, having that perspective and that knowledge of like, pay attention, obviously, you know, be polite, clap when they're done. Cause this might be a huge figure. But that's just been kind of our approach the whole time, being nice to everybody and
it's a good recipe for life.
Treat them equally.
Yeah. How did you sort of get into like this thing with Apple? Like, how did that come about and get started?
That happened really in one of the coolest ways and just the most naturally that anything that I've really done. So in times in the past when I've tried to get jobs or try to, get into a certain lane or something, you're totally aware of it and you're conscious of it, and it affects your just the way you act, and it makes it unnatural. And so Apple was actively looking, recruiting, vetting, silently in Nashville for months, if not longer, for the project that ended up becoming Apple Music Country, streaming radio all day. They were looking for members in the community before we were aware that they were watching. So thank goodness it was after the time where we kind of cleaned up our act. And I was at Whiskey Jam on stage, animated and introducing and just kind of my usual polite, friendly self. And Apple sees this and it's like, okay, Whiskey Jam is a very real part of the Nashville community, the country music community. This guy can talk for a minute or two, can like kind of pass the time. And I think after we got together and they approached me about it, they realized that my connections and my experience would be valuable to the dynamic in a country radio station project. And so by the time they had approached me, they're like, they didn't quite know what was going on. There was the cosmic dust was swirling and the pieces were starting to bang into each other and like the little planetoids were forming, but it wasn't quite, it wasn't launch day by any means. It was a while off from there. But it was Memorial Day 2019. I went out there and kind of talked to them about it, met some people. They gave me some scripts and were like, loosely, just read these in your own words.
Yeah.
And so you'd read something about Thomas Rhett and toss in some fun facts from that, only I would know, proprietary content, whatever.
Yeah.
And it just worked out really well. And they did a fantastic job of picking a really cool array of both artists to host programs and also our anchors who come from various backgrounds but have really unique and authentic experience in Nashville. I had absolutely zero experience in radio ever in my life, so the learning curve was pretty high, but I think what attracted me or attracted them to me was that I wasn't, they weren't going to have to untrain radio out of me to like fit their needs. It was the other way around. It's like, okay, we have a raw ball of clay here. Let's make this
tabula rasa.
There we go.
Blank slate.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was a little bit of a learning curve because for a while we were kind of all looking around side to side going like, where are we going? Everybody holding hands into the darkness. But as you start realizing, ways to liken it to other things, you're like, okay, this is not unlike satellite radio. This is streaming radio in your pocket or your computer all day long, live. It's just on a different platform. And so that kind of freed my brain up and I was like, oh, this is so fun. I'll have a worldwide potential audience to share new music with, which is what we've been doing on a, in our little microcosm for a decade at that point. So it was really exciting. And another one of those things I would have never, ever, ever seen it coming. We had always thought like, man, Whiskey Jam hour would be cool to have on WSIX. They could feature some of our artists in like the middle of the night. And I can't imagine if we had agreed to some of the, the proposals that we got from radio stations. Like, yeah, it sounds great. We usually do it'd be like $4,000 a week or a month or whatever. It's like, golly. So yeah, it worked out well.
That's awesome. Well, you've had so many, your journey is just like, it's one of one, as everyone's is, but yours is so interesting, and what all these different things that you've built have been so impactful, I think, to so many people, which I'm sure you realize, but I mean, like, we've had so many people on here. It's like, what'd you do when you moved to town? It's like, oh, everyone just told me to go to Whiskey Jam, you know?
That's awesome. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, dude, that's where I met so many of my friends. Truly is, you know, just showing up and seeing who was around.
It's a great place. I'm so proud to have been that, you know, safe landing for people who are coming from all over, you know? And, it was helpful to have my parents there because they made it feel to me like it really like turned up that family vibe. And I think that it extended to artists. You know, I had people reach out like, man, it's so my first years when I didn't know anybody in Nashville and I'd come see and your folks would be sitting at the table. That it was something special, you know, like it doesn't exist in every industry. It doesn't exist in every event in Nashville. And so that being just a welcome mat for anybody and everybody that any kind of music, that's another very important part of it. We never, you know, put a description on what you had to be. You know, some of our favorite acts through the years have been total outliers. But just being a welcoming place that everyone is worthy, everyone is appreciated on stage in the crowd. I think that stuff kind of pays itself back.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? My last question for you, if you could kind of go back to younger you, 21 years ago, and give them like a piece of advice, what would you say?
Man, I have so few regrets that I try to stay that way. But I think I would remind myself just to maybe manage my balance of work and play a little bit more in the work direction. Not like, hey, don't have fun in the most fun atmosphere humanly imaginable. Post-college, those mid-2000s Nashville experience is truly unlike anything else, I think, anywhere else in history. And so we wouldn't be here talking if I hadn't, you know, taken advantage of the social scene. Truly, just like the energy in this town was beyond electric, it was beyond inspiring. But it was very tempting, you know, especially when I'm bartending and hosting Whiskey Jam, you know, just juggling those two things. I could have, I think, accelerated some of the things that have happened or that may be happening in the future. If I had, you know, focused a little bit or been more, I don't even know what the right word to say is, responsible. But at the same time, I don't know if I would tell myself that because I wouldn't want to, you know, you to take this too seriously, young Ward, and miss out on these opportunities that only come from the magic that was Nashville. You know, would I have met everybody that I did while I was bartending if I was like, okay, I'm going to take a job, I'm going to be a paralegal, I'm going to be a courier, whatever. You know, that was part of the magic. So, I don't know, the advice would be just, hey, you know, maybe go like, keep it like 92 instead of 110.
Well, it is so interesting, right? Because all of those things that you did for years that led you to Frankie Ballard sending you a text saying, let's jam, which turned into Whiskey Jam. Like, who knows if that would have happened had you been a letter courier.
Dude, the amount of people that I got into the Whiskey Jam family because of the relationship that I had with them from bartending at Tin Roof, invaluable, you know, and uncountable, because it was such a unique dynamic. You know, I am a servant. I'm behind the bar. I have a towel hanging from my belt. I am at your service, quite literally, to bring you beers, to make you feel comfortable in this bar atmosphere. And that was one of the biggest, most valuable parts of developing Whiskey Jam, was working at Tin Roof simultaneously, because you would have these artists that, you know, I remember artists like their first stop in town was to go drink a beer on the patio of Tin Roof, because that's what you did. And they were there every night of the week, because that's where you go, after you write songs. When you got, Lee Brice and all his songwriters in there with a brass plaque on the table because they're there so much, it's like, this is true Music Row, a magic area. And you got artists that live in the apartments next door that spend time there on a daily basis. It was like that cool dynamic was invaluable to establishing Whiskey Jam and, just setting up that relationship like, hey, my name is Ward. I run a show. We don't know each other, but I see Mike and the Moon Pies on your credit card. Nice to meet you, Mike. Or any number of other artists that I met in that way.
Yeah.
And it's just I feel like it was easier then than it is now. Me coming and saying, hey, Ward, I run Whiskey Jam. We'd love for you to come play sometime. I would much rather be like, hey, here's your high life.
Yeah.
Would you have you ever heard of this show that I run when I'm not washing bar glasses and stuff?
Yeah. Man, that's awesome.
There's magic in it. I feel like there's a great lesson there for people who are, working, doing whatever it takes to make ends meet. I lucked into a job at Tin Roof because I was there so much hanging out. One of the bartenders was like, man, you should like work here and save some money. That turned into 11 years of great experiences and meeting people. But yeah, like whatever you're doing that might seem like a drag from time to time, it might end up being, the thing. You can't imagine. The stories you're going to hear in the future from Uber drivers, artists that were, delivering DoorDash and get to the right house. It's like, oh, I'd recognize you. I hate to do this, but what those things might lead to. So just make the most out of it.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, dude, thank you so much for being here.
I could talk all day.
I appreciate it. And that's it. That's the pod. See you later. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening. If you want to submit a question for one of our Q&A episodes, you can do so at tenuretowne.com. We would love it if you would join the Tenure Town community, which just means we'll send you updates via email about stuff we got going on. And of course, please rate and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Wherever you listen or watch this thing, we appreciate you so much. See you next week.